Hi everybody, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Juan and I am just one reader. Today's video is going to be a little bit different to the type of videos that I usually make. I want to make a video that has a little bit of everything, sort of like an update. So first I'm going to tell you the books that I have recently read and what I thought about them. Then I will talk about the books that I am currently reading and then my TBR for the month of November. So let's just jump right in. There's a lot to talk about. So recent reads, these are books numbers 51 to 53 that I have read so far this year. So book number 51 was Origin by Dan Brown. I already made a review of this, but I have recently been discussing this book with Medat Sadoun. I am probably saying your name absolutely wrong and incorrectly, but I know that you will probably comment in this video, so let me know. I have been discussing this book with him on Instagram, direct messages, and the discussion, even though it has been very brief, it has really made me reflect and think back on all the things about this book that worked and the ones that didn't. And I still stand by all the things and all the points that I mentioned in my review, but yeah, just looking back on the execution of the novel, I'm not really sure it works very well or as well as some of the other Dan Brown books that I've read. I thought it was definitely better than Inferno and The Lost Symbol, but nowhere near as good as The Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons or some of the other books that he has. I still enjoyed it. I would recommend it for some thrills and for some adventure and for, you know, some of the intellectual debate that he is proposing and that he's presenting. That was my biggest pro with this book. I really liked the intellectual ideas of religion and atheism and science. I really enjoyed that, but as a thriller, particularly if you compare it to the earlier Robert Langdon novels, it just kind of fell apart for me. So originally I gave it 3.5, but now I have dropped it down to a 3 stars. But yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world. Then after that, the next book that I read was absolutely fantastic, Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. This was the winner of the Man Booker Prize in 1999, and it absolutely deserves the acclaim and the praise. This is a story about a man who is a professor at university. In the first chapter, we get to know that he is involved with prostitutes, and he feels that this is a great solution to the problem of sex. So that's how he has dealt with his sexual requirements or his sexual needs. He just approaches this prostitute, but eventually the prostitute leaves him, abandons him, and he gets involved with one of his students at university, like one of his students that he teaches in class. So things start to unravel. From the title of the novel, Disgrace, you can figure out that this is the story of this character's descent into disgrace, and it also thematically it's amazing because it works on so many different levels. There are some really great reviewers, some really great reviews. For example, Camille from the channel What Camille Reads. This is his favorite book, and he has a review for this book that I watched after having read it, and it just made me understand and connect to the book in such a wonderful way, and appreciate it even more than I already had. So I gave this book 5 stars. It was absolutely wonderful. Maybe I did not feel the enjoyment and the pleasure and the thrill and the amazement that I sometimes feel with books that I give 5 stars to, but it was just such a perfectly executed little novel that I just could not give it less than 5 stars. It actually reminded me a lot of Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Not necessarily because of the themes that it explores or the stories themselves, but because of the execution, the neat, elegant turn of phrase, the prose is just impeccably good. It's just good writing, like poetic, beautiful, concise writing, mesmerizingly beautiful. And they are very short novels. This one and Giovanni's Room are both really short novels that just pack a punch, and they are technically, I think they are perfect novels. So yeah, really recommend that one, 5 stars. And then the last book that I finished reading was Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, the illustrated edition, illustrated by Jim Kay. I did not mark this as read on Goodreads because I didn't read it like word by word. I have read this book like 30 times or 20 times or whatever, so there's no need for me to read every single thing in here. I know this book pretty much by heart, so I just kind of looked through it and read some of my favorite passages and sort of, you know, just read a little bit of what I wanted to read, and you know, the rest I just skipped it. I actually read this book earlier this year for my series of rereading Harry Potter as an adult, so I had no problem just flicking through it. And I gotta say, I was a little bit disappointed by this illustrated edition. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be like the Grinch here. I enjoy Jim Kay's illustrations, but I thought the previous ones, Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, were much better. I thought this one had not as many illustrations as I would have liked. And there were some illustrations that I just kind of found a little bit pointless, when there were some other illustrations that I feel could have needed or would have benefited from more detail or from more of a spectacular factor. For example, I mean, I don't want to show you the illustrations because I know that a lot of you haven't seen these illustrations and I don't want to spoil them, but I'm just going to show you one just to show you what I mean. This is the Patronus, and it's a pretty illustration. It's pretty nice. It's okay, but it's just not as grand or as spectacular, considering that that's the climax of this book, and it's such an important moment. So I liked this, but if I had to rate this illustrated edition, I would probably go for a very average 3-star rating. It did not amaze me. It did not surprise me. It did nothing really special. I'm gonna show you my favorite illustration from the entire book, which might sound like a weird choice, but I really liked this type of illustrations, and I think Jim Kay does them so well, but he should do them more. He should do more of these type of illustrations, and it's a very simple illustration. It's very small. It's I don't know if you can appreciate it because it's very small, but it's the Weasley, the clipping from the newspaper from the trip to Egypt, that, you know, when the Weasley family, they win this kind of lottery and they go to Egypt, and it's actually a photograph that we can see in the movie, but now we have the illustrated edition of that scene, of that photograph, and it just looks exactly the way it should. Like, I love how these characters look. They are the Weasleys. So yeah, that's my favorite part. But the rest was kind of a disappointment. Okay, so now very quickly moving on to the books that I am currently reading. I am currently reading Autumn by Alice Smith. I am enjoying it, but I am not really loving it. So, I don't know. I am still reading It by Stephen King, slowly but surely. One day I'll finish it. One day I'll fly away. Okay, and now I'm still here. Okay. Now, November TBR. So I feel sometimes that I have failed as a reader, or that I have failed in terms of planning my reading and planning my TBRs. My TBRs this year, or at least recently, have been just incredibly demanding and incredibly difficult to get through. Not because of the books themselves, but because of the quantity, the amount of books. I mean, my TBRs have been so bloated and exaggerated that they're very ambitious, and so I have a lot of catching up to do. So the books that I should read in November are a series of unfortunate events, book 11, 12, and 13. So I should finish the series. So 11, 12, and 13, which, you know, these are very, very fast. So I could probably read all of these in 1 week. Then I have to read The Railway Children by E. Nesbitt, which I should have read in October, but there's no way in hell. Fates and Furies by Lauren Groff, which I also was supposed to read in October, didn't do it. The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, should have read it in October and didn't. Under the Skin by Michelle Faber, same thing. I should have read this in October, didn't have the time. Slade House by David Mitchell, the same thing. I should have read this in October, no time. A Constellation of Vital Phenomena by Anthony Mara. I don't know if this was in my October TBR. It probably was. And again, another book that I should have read in October but couldn't was the second novel from the Sherlock Holmes novels, which is The Sign of Four. And of course, in November, I will also be reading The Book of Dust, La Belle Sauvage by Philip Pullman, which has been my most anticipated read for years and years and years. And it was published in October, but not in Mexico. So we still don't have the book here. It still hasn't arrived. So I have been notified by Amazon that I will be receiving my copy of that book on October 31st. So I will start reading it as soon as I get it, like as soon as I receive the package in these two hands, I will be reading that. I will probably finish it in November. So yeah. Thank you very much for watching. Please leave your comments down below and we will have a conversation about these books. I am Just One Reader and I will see you next time.